ticking.
Introduce yourself, sir.
My name's Zahn. Howdy. I'm one of the co-founders of Initia. Initia is a network for interwoven rollups. We're really focused on rebuilding how we think the multi-chain world should look, feel, and operate by having a lot of opinions on how the architecture should be shaped, how the product UX should look across these, and then how you tie in clever economics that kind of unites all of these app chains together to form what I like to call the multi-chain Garden of Eden.
That's a lot of words. I'm just realizing he gave me his dog before I got up here, and I'm thinking this is a way to bait me into not being so vicious towards his view of the future. I'm Brad. I am working as head of growth for MegaETH. If you don't know about MegaETH, we describe ourselves as the first real-time blockchain. It is basically just the idea that we are going to leverage the Ethereum stack. We're an L2 on top of Ethereum, but take it to its logical conclusion and make it as performant as humanly possible, only restricted by basically hardware and some novel mechanics from low latency distributed systems in the Web 2 world, and basically just kind of be very opinionated that the market has shown that it wants very performant blockchains, even if it is not maximally decentralized like the Ethereum layer 1, and let's just deliver that.
How do you feel about other people saying that they have real-time blockchains as well?
I've heard that at this conference. It's good. Actually, we can take this over into like a branding conversation.
I also heard someone has a lot more TPS than you do. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, TPS is yesterday's problem, actually. That's what I'm actually really excited about, because now everyone's going after, oh my God, we handle a million gajillion TPSs, which is fine, right? Like whatever. Solana, even with all of its craziness today, I think the max TPS it hit was like between 1.5, 2K, right? Whatever. You know, we're boasting 100,000 TPS is like our, you know, what we're striving for. You know, Monad's coming, they're in testnet right now. They're hitting like 5,000 TPS. We're already at 15,000 TPS in our testnet. It's like, it's kind of yesterday's problem, right? Like most of these chains, Initia, even your Minitias, right? You're saying like 10,000 TPS per, right? Like capacity isn't the angle that like the competitive vector for the next wave of chains. We are focusing on the real-time aspect, the latency aspect. Latency.
Describe what latency means in this context.
Yeah, fuck. That's a loaded word, especially in our world, right? So one, you have to think of like the, I'll just simplify it. It's the responsiveness of the chain, right? Like today you go on Base, they have 2-second block times. Trying to cut that down to 200 milliseconds. Yeah, I wrote a thread on that this morning. So like 2-second block times today, that means you click a button, you submit a transaction to Base, you go 1, 2, okay, cool, it can show in the app, it's true, it's whatever, right? That 2-second lag time is like when the information can propagate throughout the ecosystem, right? You place a bid, 2 seconds later, someone can accept the bid, 2 seconds later, that shows up in the app, right? 4-second total. So latency in this world can be either like the actual time it takes for messages to travel between systems, but also just like the full transaction life cycle that I just described, right? You place the bid, it gets on chain.
So a lot of that is actually just bounded by like network latency, stuff that you don't necessarily have the ability to control outside of like geolocation.
Correct. Like you break it down into 3 parts just to make it simple, right? The first is like, I am, you know, the thing creating the blocks is in China, I'm in New York. Physics dictates how long it's going to take for my message to get to that thing, but then how long does that thing have to chew on the information to then give it back to me, right? In the EVM world, that materializes itself as block times, right? Like Base has a 2-second block time. It takes 100 milliseconds for me to get my message there.
For now.
For now. We'll say Arbitrum, right? Arbitrum, that one's static. Arbitrum is 250 milliseconds.
For those that don't know, Base released some things today called
yesterday.
Yesterday.
Yeah,
well, today they fought us. Yesterday they fought you.
They fought you? Wait, what was the...
Yesterday they said they're doing something called like flash blocks.
Yeah.
They're dropping the block time from 2 seconds down to 200 milliseconds. And so they're going to come fight with MegaETH. Today they released Base's app chain stack.
No shit.
Yeah.
I heard, okay, that's what someone just, yeah, Altlayer just said that.
So they're going to come fight with us now.
Damn. Are they going to break from the super chain, you think? This is, oh man, oh man. Okay, so yeah, talk about it, right? So okay, so if you visualize what Initia is building, right? Initia's construction is like, it's basically what Ethereum's turned into, but in a more opinionated matter, right? So like Ethereum's kind of fucked up because there's everyone doing all kinds of different shit. There's 9 different interoperability standards. Like there's no real like value accrual to mainnet. It's like kind of loosely associated because they post blobs and shit. What Zani's trying to do here is like, they're putting the guardrails in place so that all of the value accrual, this velocities, connections between all of these chains is actually like embedded in the system, right?
One might claim it's reflexive.
Yeah, great
But
term.
yeah, basically, just like you guys, we are highly opinionated on how these systems should work. What has been bad so far is you have a couple of prominent app chain stacks. You have basically the OP stack, which is relevant, and then you have things like Cosmos SDK. Cosmos SDK gave teams the flexibility to actually customize execution, transaction ordering, stuff that can lead to you winning out one vertical if you're building a certain application-specific blockchain. Layer 2s on Ethereum, however, they just gave you this base level infra where you can have, your own sandbox, but really no customizations outside of that. Then you had basically big modularity trick everyone into thinking, what is important to edit on these OP stack chains. It's things like what DA layer you're using, what interop, what Oracle. But frankly, when you talk to developers, no one cares about those edits. They just want something that works. And what's important about having shared standards across, potentially hundreds of blockchains is you want everyone on the same messaging platform. You want people posting to the same DA places because there are benefits to having those standards. And so with our opinions in place, we can build what we think is the right way to tackle multi-chain while giving developers the customizability that matters. So what VM you're using, how transactions are ordered, et cetera, instead of DA and those useless items.
I would say like that's a good description of what you're doing. Obviously, you're the co-founder. I hope you know that. But the next, like the most important thing, and like the reason there's a lot of consternation in the Ethereum ecosystem is because you have all these people doing all this shit, building all those things, and like where the fuck is the value going, right? Not to Ethereum, the token, right? That thing's going down. So it's like there's no structural value accrual that's like mandated or protocol level between these layer 2s and Ethereum, the mainnet token. So like this thing that was initially there to build network effects and have people pull in the same direction is now eroding, frankly, because all these people are able to do whatever they want and there's no actual direct value accrual. So that's why when you saw like blobs introduced, right? The fees were starting to be eroded from mainnet because...
Yeah, we need to turn the fees back up.
I mean, psychologically, I'm in the money camp of like, yeah, sure, if you want to get to like Bitcoin levels, you have to break away from strict fees, but like, I think you fucking need a little bit of it, right? So like, yeah, they do need to bring a little bit of it
Return
back.
to fundamentals, one might say.
Yeah, that's the wave.
So
But anyways,
I heard
that's what I'm saying for Initia. You guys have thoughtfully, on top of the protocol level like messaging shit, sure, but also just like the direct value accrual and like the mechanisms you have in place to incentivize these Minitias, which are like the L2s of Initia, to give back and utilize the actual native token to then hopefully accrue value to it. Big modularity. Heard what Zani was going after him. Here, you want to borrow mine?
There's essentially 3 main pillars that we have at Initia. One is that architecture stack that we were talking about. The second is product UX. So how can we make sure that every single one of these rollups, the experience is quite similar for end users? How do you move across them? What do users see and interact with? And then the third, as Brett mentioned, was very clever economic system that we think helps create reflexivity within this system. It ensures that layer 2s care about the underlying layer 1 and winning together, but it also gives them as much as possible to help them win. We have come to the realization that Initia shouldn't exist unless app chains on the stack are winning. So we will do everything that we can, both with tech, product, economics, go to market, everything else, to ensure that some of these teams win, so that then Initia wins.
Talk about one of the reflexivity mechanisms that you have.
Okay, so Initia VIP, how it works is essentially we distribute rewards every epoch to layer 2s. The way that how much rewards are decided, or the way that we decide how much rewards to give to each layer 2 is based on 2 mechanisms. One is the init balances held on that layer 2, and the second is a gauge vote that happens from the layer 1 stakers underneath. Then,
Is it kind of like a curve thing?
yeah,
Like,
kind of like a curve model. And then on each of these layer 2s, they decide how to distribute these tokens to their users. So it is basically a programmatic grant system, but you decide what is important to incentivize on my chain, what do I want users to actually be doing, and then the underlying layer 1 will distribute rewards for you in the form of escrowed init tokens. And the way that users unlock these rewards is by continuing to use the chain over time. And this creates a few things. One is users use your product for the long term. It creates a flywheel for them. They have to keep using them. As they use them, they will get more locked rewards. The second is it creates alignment with the underlying layer 1 because your goal is to build more init supply sinks across all of these layer 2s. We're really big believers that demand for your native token is what's important, not supply burning. I think a lot of products focus on burning supply, but I don't think you can ever create supply-demand effects unless you're burning enough tokens because you built like a Ponzi-like system, like Terra Luna.
great stuff.
Quick question for you though, because you're talking about ETH value accrual
Yep.
and how it hasn't happened on layer 2s, but I've seen many times that MegaETH is supposed to save ETH.
That's the rumor.
Is that true?
That's the rumor. We'll talk about like you were starting to get into it there with like utilization of the native token as like a means of accruing value, right? There's two ways or two schools of thought right now of like what makes a token valuable? Like what the fuck? Like why? What makes ETH go up? Right? One, you're gonna have a school of thought that's like okay, burn fees, whatever, right? That's like where you have people come in with discounted cash flows and like, oh, if this blockchain burns 10 million a day, then like the token should theoretically be worth a gajillions, right? So like there's that side. But then if you start calculating the numbers that way, you realize there's a little bit of an upper bound of like how much anything can be worth, right? You like because now you're anchored to something as like, well,
It's also like we want things to be more expensive so that we have more fees.
right.
That's why alt DAs have always confused me.
Why? Like
It's because a lot of them are based on how much revenue are you generating as an alt DA, but to generate more revenue, the price has to go up, and if the price has to go up, it gets more
it becomes
expensive to use
less
an alt
effective
DA.
as a thing.
So now do we have an alt DA?
Yeah, we call that AWS. Or
That's
AnyTrust.
actually what Base's AppChain stack released is being used as their DA layer.
Literally AWS?
Literally
Or they're
Amazon
not,
AWS.
they're not even feigning the
No, they're
AnyTrust
not even
stuff?
pretending to be decentralized.
That's unfortunate. All right, anyways, to finish that topic, it was like, okay, so the fees is one aspect of like, why is this thing valuable? Why are people giving confidence to bid into something that's Ethereum, right? The other side of that is like the raw moneyness of something. And what the fuck does moneyness mean? It means like utilization of the asset within your ecosystem, right? You can't really quantify it if you use it as a medium of exchange. A good example right now in today's world is like when you guys go into the Solana ecosystem, you're not buying, 10 grand of Solana because it's expensive to operate on Solana, right? Because it's cheap as shit. You don't care. You buy 10 grand because you want to ape a shitter like a week from now, right? Like you need it as a medium of exchange. And then even if I don't want to like do that myself, I know the dude next to me is probably going to ape a shitter with that 10 grand. And like I just want to hold on to the Solana because I know he's probably going to want more Solana to reload after he gets liquidated, right? Cool. Like, and then the same thing with just like the ecosystem validators, right? They just, we'll just eat some
So
APY
what
with
went
that.
wrong with Ethereum? Because ETH was this moneyness concept. We had this last cycle where everyone was like, okay, I sell my profits back into ETH. And then ETH was the largest lending asset on every market, the biggest DEX pair.
So it still has that, right? It still has that to a degree. The problem is like the thing that has taken the chalice from Ethereum are these current roll-ups, the current iteration of these roll-ups where like, we have Zani here talking about his Initials will have like 10K TPS, which is competitive with Solana, right? So like now you can, like the vanguard of performance, user experience, whatever, would have taken place on a Initia, right? Because it can compete with Solana. But Base, Arbitrum, all these guys are doing like cumulatively between all of the roll-ups around 200 TPS, right, at peak. Like that's fucking nothing, right? Solana's doing 1,300. Again, my man over here is trying to go for 10K per. So it wasn't competitive. So like now in the previous cycle where Solana was seen as the poor man chain, there wasn't a developed ecosystem, there wasn't many apps. Ethereum was the fastest at the time, so like it was the place where you did all this shit, and you just said like, the cost is the cost, right? But now because people had an option, because Solana was developed, people were spending time over there, and rollups just couldn't compete, right? They weren't fast enough, they weren't performant enough. So the moneyness aspect, even though they use Ethereum as gas or whatever, they were not buying Ethereum in bulk to do stuff. You started to see a little bit of it with like virtuals, right? Virtuals came to market. People had to buy ETH and use ETH to get to virtuals to do the thing, to do the hot new thing. And it started to lose a little bit of that because it wasn't absorbing a lot of it. And there's fragmentation, there's confusion. Like people just didn't enjoy it, right? So the thought is like, well, if the moneyness thing, because like, and again, these rollups are paying basically nothing back to Ethereum. $150 million in fees and base. I think they paid like 5% back to Ethereum. It's like in fees, right? So not a lot. So they're losing all of their execution to these things that are not the best, and not the best things are not paying much to Ethereum in fees. So you kind of just lose both ends. So like for us to say like, how are we going to save Ethereum, right? It's like, well, if we can be more performant, more crazy, more ridiculous than Solana, even Hyperliquid showing a little bit of this, that people are going there because it's performant, because it's got a good UX, then now on our chain, which is still settles to Ethereum, uses some of its, uses it for security, and it'll use Ethereum for gas. Like you need Ethereum to do the hot, cool shit on MegaETH, right? So like, yes, we're gonna pay even less fees, like direct fees for operation back to Ethereum than like a roll up than base, but like who gives a shit whenever you need 20 grand worth of ETH so you can do the cool hot new thing on MegaETH, because it can only take place on MegaETH, right? It's like
with the ETH tokens.
With ETH tokens, right? So like, and like, you know, there's a whole world of what can happen there, but like like having ETH as money, that's what money is. It's just like you need it to do the shit, right? That's what it is, and that's how you accrue value. How much that's worth, you can't really quantify it, which is kind of the problem. But that's the school of thought. Like that's the other spectrum, other end.
Good value accrual conversation. Since we only have 2 minutes left, tell me one cool thing that you think is going to happen with AI since we are at an agentic crypto day.
Yeah, so I didn't dabble in agents too hard this cycle, thankfully, I think, because a lot of my friends told me they round-tripped basically everything.
You should see the charts. You pair like every asset that's down 50% against Zero Bro, which is was a really hot AI meme coin, and it's just up only.
Yeah, like I tell you what, I'm gonna steal this answer from someone that Terry at Eclipse. It was that I'm looking forward to the natural language implementation of agents that has like conditionals applied to it. I would love to be able to like have a terminal where I have, you know, a portion of my bag and be like, man, like whenever the market cap hits this percentage, like dump 20% of my bag, and then like continue to like monitor it and like have like a layered conditional thing that I don't have to sit there and set like all the parameters. I can just natural language, just like talk to my homie, and then like he can manage my funds in the back end, almost like a fund manager with natural language.
Yeah, I think I've heard some arguments that no one is ever going to use front ends again. They're only going to use
like
NLP.
It's a new UI, right?
But I think that's fake because I'd like to know what I'm doing, even if I maybe trust the model. I think I like to know what I'm doing to an extent, and I'm not going to necessarily trust all the protocols that this AI interacts with.
Yeah, I think that like you're a power user though. Like that's my same like bear case for modularity, right? It's like, yes, you can have the one application that works across all the L2s, but like if you're someone that gives a shit, you're gonna have like your specific setup with your specific slippage on your specific Telegram bot to do your specific like ape the shitter thing on this one specific L2, and you're never gonna have like the exact experience that you want unless you have a very curated application. Yeah.
Yeah, so my one AI thing that I think is going to be very exciting is AI for fully on-chain games. I think fully on-chain games are just like a poor user experience right now because you have to go click things, wait a little bit, click some more things, like move around. But with AI, you can basically be a strategist for this game. You can basically just tell it what type of strategy you want to implement and how you want to interact with this game, and then let the model kind of take it from there. And so it becomes more of like a, how do you build the best strategy and define that rather than who's clicking the right buttons.
I think that's a great way to end our talk. Thank you, Zani, for coming out and having this fireside chat with me.
You too.